on watching, if you are watching on Instagram right now, you're going to see me a lot better if you jump onto Facebook. If you're a Facebook person, I'm not sure. Can people be a Facebook person, Rich? Jump on Facebook, look for Shooting Performance or the IDPA page or the American Warrior Society page. Pick one. Jump on. Watch me live. I'll stay live on Instagram for a second. I know we're jumping on live on Facebook as well. Today's going to be a good discussion, Rich. We're talking all about one-handed shooting. Like, how do you build structure? Everything is structure. You know, if you think about that, every single thing we talk about in shooting is structure. From a two-handed position to a one-handed position to shooting your own rifle. You know, Rich? Hey, good morning, folks. Are we live, dude, or what do we have?
We're live. Got 22 folks on. Elkie Monroe is on. Says good.
Holy moly, 22 people on, and looks like we have 16 on Instagram. Hey, Instagrammers right now, thank you for joining me. I'm going to end this live stream here in just a minute. Good morning, folks. Hey, there's Dr. Hull in Oregon. Good morning, Dr. Hull. How are you? That's awesome. We got a bunch of people jumping on Facebook, folks. If you are jumping on right now, good morning. If you want to do us a favor before we do our intros and safety briefing, click that share button. I know Mr. Rich Brown is going to be behind the curtains this morning. My name is Mike Seeklander. And, of course, we have IDPA helping us as well. Miss Chris is on, so she should be sharing it for the IDPA viewers. We're live on 3 Facebook pages, the IDPA page, the American Warrior Society page, and my Shooting Performance page. So last week, Rich, what did we have, 160-some live viewers?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, 157, 160.
Yeah, and so here's the deal. What was our goal last week? We didn't quite hit it. Was 175 live viewers. If we had 175 live viewers, we're giving away a full, maybe not be a USPSA rig because this is the dark side, right? But a full Mike Seeklander signature line fast holster and mag pouch setup. Okay, so that's all you got to do is you got to click the share button. We'll draw from someone that shared. If you didn't share, then well, we can't give you a holster. Anyways, if you want to win a full rig, that's all you got to do. Good morning, folks. Who do we have on, Rich? We got a bunch of people.
I want to say good morning to everybody that's a member of the American Warrior Society. Tell me what your coin number is and where you're at this morning.
Coin number 248 is on. That's a pretty low number. Billy Miller is 248. That's a low number. Hey, folks, also, if you are one of my ACSS members, that's the competitive side, please tell us your ACSS. And also, if you're doing IDPA Mastery or USPSA Mastery or whatever else, let us know. Hey, Instagram, good morning. Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you, but I'm talking to my primary camera, which is right there. I am going to end this live stream on Instagram. Jump on Facebook, move over to one of those pages that we just referenced, and you can watch this whole live stream. We're talking about one-handed shooting structure and some low-light tips and some other crazy, super awesome stuff. So anyways, I'll see you on the Facebook. In my live stream there, and I'm going to share that sucker. Hold on, Rich.
We're up to 93, pal.
93? Okay. Well, I'm going to blow Instagram off. All right, folks, just a few things. Good morning. My name is Mike Seeklander. If you're on one of the 93 viewers, we're going to get right into it. Today, we're talking about one-handed shooting structure and position, and I'm going to give you some key secrets to shooting better with one hand for whatever reason, whether you're doing that for competitive reasons or for defensive reasons. Of course, I'm in my competition gear today. I'm a sponsored shooter professional sponsored shooter with Team Wilson Combat. I'm joined by my co-host and partner in crime, Mr. Rich Brown, who's there behind the curtain. You'll see him wave, and he'll be feeding questions as we do this. But before we do anything, safety is our primary thing. We want to always talk about safety. If you're going to do this and have a firearm near you, please, no handling of live firearms or live ammunition. If you see my magazine, I've got some orange tip dummy rounds in my magazine for a little bit of weight on the other side of my belt. I'm going to be using one of my 1911 systems today. It is unloaded and clear, right? So I've got an unloaded and clear 1911. I also have one of our Wilson Combat Beretta 92s. This one is actually converted with a cool fire trainer. So I'm going to talk to you about the cool fire trainer, but you'll know this is a safe and non-firing system as well. I can't clear it because this is not an actual barrel. It's a cool fire barrel, which gives me felt recoil, which is kind of cool. Get it? Cool fire. So do me a favor right now. If you're going to be doing this live stream with me, check and make sure you have no live firearms or ammunition. All safety rules apply, and all the standard safety rules apply as well. You know, muzzle direction, trigger finger. If you're going to dry fire with me, which I recommend you do, make sure you have a safe backstop, right? So if you don't have a safe backstop, please, just be aware of that. So all safety rules must be applied. And a couple more things. If you want to learn more about me, you can jump on MikeSeeklander.com. You can check out my bio. You can also on some of those links in the show notes if you want to learn more about competition and fundamentals course. And I'm going to show this off because it just came out. It's pretty cool. I did a video series with Mr. Rob Latham. It's actually probably one of the most in-depth and entertaining video series I've ever done. Of course, if you're following us online, you can check that out. You can go to thebiggercircle.com and you can get the DVD or the USB. So if you're an off-grid person, like you'd rather watch stuff without having to do the internet, there you go. There's your DVD and your USB option. So that's out there if you want that. Last but not least, we have a couple sponsors that I want to talk about real briefly. Of course, this is the Seeklander signature line made by Precision Holsters. I'll give you a flyby. Ooh, look how pretty that is.
Nice.
Precision holster. That's the fast holster, right? There's some mag pouch. This is my USPSA rig. Of course, today, Rich, as you know, I'm wearing my IDPA rig. So I've got my signature line IDPA holster, one of my 1911s, and a mag pouch. So check them out, Precision Holsters. Click the link in the show notes as well. And by the way, you can go to all of our sponsors on our podcast page, American Warrior Show. Second thing is the Coolfire Trainer. If you haven't seen it, actually, Coolfire is based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I bumped into him, and we have had a relationship ever since because it's one of the most unique training tools I own. So, for example, when I'm talking to you today about the one-handed shooting structure position, and I actually fire my gun, you're going to see the gun recoil, right? You're going to see the slide cycle and recoil. And that's the cool thing about the Coolfire. You take your firearm, you replace your barrel, the Coolfire barrel, and the recoil spray, and then when you fire it, you get felt recoil. Basically, this barrel has compressed CO2 in it. I'll show you how to fill it up in a second. So check them out as well, okay? So, Mr. Rich Brown, how many people we have on? We have a bunch of people on.
110 on so far.
110. Do me a favor, folks. We're going to get into this. But before we do, let's do a coffee pause or whatever you're drinking this morning, tea. Please do me a favor. Click share. Share it to your wall. If you're a member of some groups out there, shooting groups, share it to those groups. Tell them, hey, we're live. We're talking about one-handed shooting structure, some secrets, some tips and tricks. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some flash techniques as well, okay, that you can apply in defensive or competitive stuff.
Alberto is on from the Philippines, Mike, and let us know where you're from. The last several weeks we've had people from all over the planet. Please share into some of those groups and let them know that IDPA is taking over the world, brother.
Wow, man. Alberto from the Philippines. That's awesome. We had people all over, and I see a bunch of folks share. Shannon shared. Kelly Allen shared. Tony shared. Alberto shared. I love it. Look at all these shared people. We have 119 on. We're going to hit 175 today. No doubt. Hey, Bob Beal's on. Look at Bob Beal. Good morning, Bob. Good morning, Joey. How are you, sir? Rick, hey, how are you? Good. Okay. So, all right, Mr. Richard, let me start teaching. And folks, if you're watching this right now, good morning. There's the smiley, happy Mike Seeklander. You can't beat this. Joined by Mr. Rich Brown. Anyways, let's talk about one-handed position and structure. And if you have questions, throw them up there, because what's going to happen is as we go through this, Mr. Rich Brown is going to be seeing your questions, and he'll feed me questions as we do a question break. So in terms of shooting with one hand, of course, if you haven't watched the grip video with the two-handed grip pressure that I teach, please go back and watch one of those live streams in the future. You can also catch it on YouTube. There's a lot of great tips there. But for one-handed positioning, I got to talk to you a little bit about two-handed positioning first. So if I were to show you my two-handed shooting position, you notice that the handgun is being supported and controlled with what we describe as the upper body triangle, right? Which means that this arm connected to the handgun, connected to my upper body, and the other arm connected to the handgun. If you look at it, it technically forms a triangle, kind of a top end triangle. So when I talk about a reference to the upper body triangle, that's what I'm talking about. So when I'm talking about the upper body triangle, that means that I'm pressuring the gun and I'm gripping it in a manner where my strong hand is driving and pressuring from the rear. My support hand is doing the same thing. I'm crushing the gun from the back, but I have 2 points of pressure on the gun. I have the strong hand point of pressure, and I have my support hand point of pressure. So if I take that same shooting stance and position and took one hand off the gun and fired it like this gun is immediately going to recoil in the direction where there's no longer pressure, right? If you think about that, there's no pressure on that side, so the gun is going to recoil in that direction. If I transfer it to my support hand, now the gun is going to recoil the opposite direction. So we want to address structure first. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you and teach you about is structure. So to fix that structure, if the other hand is not on the gun, for whatever reason, maybe you're doing some low light stuff. Maybe you are shooting a one-handed only required stage in IDPA. Whatever it is, you're only shooting with one hand. So what I want to do initially is I want to line the arm up with the gun. So if you look at my arm and my gun right now, there's nothing behind the gun but my thumb, right? So to fix that, I'm going to give you a couple options. Number one, you could take the handgun and you can cant it. So notice how now the arm and the gun are lined up, right? The gun and arm are not lined up now. Now they are lined up. So there's a slight cant in my position. That's position one you could try. The second option is you could take that lead hand, and the lead arm that you're shooting with, and you can rotate it down behind the gun. So the second position may be a little bit harder for some of you if you have some shoulder inflexibility issues. And for example, I had a torn rotator cuff for a long time there, and I had to switch from my preferred position, which was the arm down position, right, to a canted position where I started canting the gun more. I tend to shoot with a slight cant now, where I drop the elbow down, but I still have a slight cant to the gun. But the point is, if you look at the gun right now, there's nothing behind the handgun, right? So I'm going to cant the gun slightly, or I'm going to rotate the elbow down. So I say, when I talk about one-handed shooting, by the way, good morning, folks. If you're jumping on, I see a bunch of people that are watching and listening and seeing everything. Man, how many people got on? 145 live viewers.
Yep.
Holy moly, folks. Hey, send a text message. Tell your shooting buddies and friends and girls that you're shooting or you're watching live stream right now. Jump on to learn some things and throw some questions at me, okay?
Mike,
So
you mentioned if you had an injured shoulder, it'd be hard. What if you're like me and you're just really jacked, and you have a hard time?
If you're so jacked you can't even get the arm down because you have so much muscle mass. Yeah, so that would be interesting if you were jacked, Rich. I mean, if you were actually jacked, that would be very interesting. But I haven't found that to be the case the last couple of times I've seen you. But I do have that problem personally. Sometimes I have that problem. So back to being serious. So when we build our one-handed shooting structure, I want to tell you, get the arm behind the gun and the body weight behind the arm. So to show you the body weight posture, I want to show you my upper body lean. So if I'm going to shoot with one hand, first of all, you'd probably say, well, Mike, what do you do with your feet? So my feet, when I'm shooting with two hands, my feet in my foot position, my leg and foot position, is whatever is required for the stage of the thing I'm doing, right? So that generally means that my feet are wide of the shoulder width. My right foot is slightly back. They're in a nice triangular platform. I'm keeping my pelvis square to the target or whatever else. When I go to my one-handed position, however, I'm going to lead with the foot that I'm shooting with. So if I'm shooting with my right hand, I'm going to lead with my right foot. If I'm shooting with my left hand, I'm going to lead with my left foot. And let me show you my body posture position. I'm leading with my right foot because I'm shooting with my right hand, but I'm not upright, right? So I'm not standing up because this is not a good position or structure. We always talk about structure. Remember that term, folks. Structure. I have not built a good structure. So every time I fire the gun, it would be pushing my body to the rear. So if I'm firing very, very quickly on a series of 2 or 3 targets, it's going to change my upper body and push it to the rear, believe it or not, even a 9mm, because the recoil has to go somewhere. It is going to go up a little bit, but the farther it goes up, the more I have to return the handgun. So if you look at my structure and position, I'm going to take my upper body and I'm going to lean into the gun. So how do you figure out how much to lean into the gun? Here's a little drill for you. Go to the range, load a couple full magazines, line up in front of the target, get your arm position done right first, right? So get the arm behind the gun, and then to play with your body weight, stand upright and fire a shot and see what the gun does to you. And then lean into the gun a little bit more and fire a shot and see what the gun does. Then lean in a little bit more and fire a shot. And you're going to find a position when you're pretty aggressive and forward, you're putting your body weight in a place where your body is returning the gun from recoil. So your body is controlling the recoil, not just the strength of your fingers and your wrist and your arm or whatever else. By the way, we had 168 on. Yep. So we're so close to 175. All we got to do is hit 175 live viewers, and we're giving some free stuff away. Products and gift certificates from my DPA. Rich is going to give a couple of his guns away. Not really. Just joking, right?
A lot of people said I was jacked, Mike. I'm gonna go back here.
Sure, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't see those comments. Yeah. Hey, so here's the deal: one-handed shooting structure. Get the arm behind the gun, whether you're canting it slightly or rotating the elbow down, right? Okay, whichever you choose, and then get the body weight behind the arm. So get the arm behind the gun, the body weight behind the arm, and then I'm going to tell you probably the single biggest thing you can do to improve some of your recoil control. is what I call flagging the thumb. So if you look at my grip here, if I take my thumb and I put it down, right? What I do in essence is I take the pressure away from the back of the gun and I leave a little gap in the back of the gun. So when the gun recoils, it's going to recoil in that direction. So I want you to take your handgun if you have one right now, and I want you to take your thumb, your strong side thumb or your sport side thumb, and I want you to slowly start to flag it up in the air. So the second I do that, you're going to see that pull these 3 fingertips into the grip of the handgun. So the second you flag it, you're automatically going to increase the pressure between the 3 fingers in the grip itself. Now these 3 fingers, the supporting fingers, are the secret to firing the gun without moving it. So when I'm working on one-handed shooting position, other than structure, which is getting the arm behind the gun and the body weight behind the arm, when I'm doing my drills, I'm thinking in my mind, grip, meaning grip these 3 fingers and then pull. So I grip and then pull versus grip and pull. So grip, then pull. Don't grip and pull. If you grip and pull, you're going to move the gun. I promise that. Okay. Hey, by the way, I think hey, John is on in coin number 2330. Nice to have you, Rudy. Hey, 1694. There's a bunch of coin members on. That's awesome.
We got guests from Thailand on at the moment.
Thailand, holy moly! That's awesome, folks. Hey, we're talking about one-handed structure and position. And I just talked about the hand. I'll talk about the transfer here in a second. Then we'll talk a little bit about some flashlight stuff. But Mr. Rich, do we have any questions? Why are we not hitting 175? I guarantee 100 people just share this sucker. Did Facebook set a number? They put a dial. Yeah. Mr. Zuckerberg, did you put a dial and you dialed at 167? That's all you'll let us go to.
Mike, can you read that comment from Brian? Can you see that right there?
Which one, man? The one that says, hey, good morning.
Nah, that's the one right there.
Rich is ripped. Brian, have you seen Rip? Brian, have you seen Rich lately? Have you actually seen him in person? Not so much, buddy. He's got a little bit of his holiday weight on right now.
Yeah, I do. That's true.
I do too. I look at myself in this live stream. I'm like, I gotta lose a couple pounds. All right, Mr. Rich, any questions that stand out to you right now before I go on?
No, sir, not at all.
No questions right now. So we're talking about one-handed shooting structure. So real quick, for those of you that are competitors that may have to draw and transfer, let me talk to you about the draw and transfer real quick. By the way, unloaded and clear 1911 system. Now, for a 1911 system, I'm also going to talk about the actual activation of the safety and when I do that. So when we're talking about the draw and transfer, if you watch my standard draw, it looks like this, right? I'm going to draw the handgun. Both hands are going to move at the same time, attack the gun from the rear and draw, okay? So that's my standard two-handed draw, right? So when I do a draw and transfer, I may initially set my foot position up. So if I know I'm going to be shooting with my support hand, I'm going to set that foot up forward anyways because I know I want to get my body weight behind the gun, right? So when I draw the handgun, notice I'm moving my hands just like I do in my standard draw, okay? But after that happens, the gun comes up and it starts to drive by my support hand. Now, this is a key detail. As the gun is coming by my support hand, I'm starting to flag this strong hand thumb higher and higher, right? What that's going to do is that's going to open up the back of the gun. Now I can take the other thumb and I can drive it in the back of the gun, and I'm going to drive my support hand up the back of the gun. Now there's a point where I'm controlling the handgun with these 3 fingers, okay? So as I'm controlling the handgun with these 3 fingers, then I could drive the other hand up the back strap of the gun, and I'm literally pushing my hand up. So I build that same consistent grip that I would with the other hand, okay? And then I transfer the other hand. Now, when I transfer, I'm going to wipe the hand out. So pull it out, wipe it out. How are you, whatever the word term that would be. But watch the hand. I push this up, and I pull this straight back. This hand is going to go back to my chest. Now, once I've transferred the gun, that's when I'm going to wipe the safety off, build my shooting position, whether it's slightly canted or up and down, right? And then start to fire my shots. Of course, after I do my initial transfer, right here in my mind, I'm thinking grip with the 3 supporting fingers. I want to grip and then pull. Okay? Boom, 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 boom. So a full draw and transfer for you. Okay? By the way, don't do a throw transfer. I've seen some competitors in competition where they're basically throwing the handgun, right? The throw transfer, no good. It's illegal, actually, because you've lost control of the handgun. So when I do this, I have control of the handgun the entire time. One more key secret for you, and this is really important. whenever you're drawing the handgun, the trigger finger position is super important. So if I draw the handgun and let the trigger finger be in a position, I'll give you a visual of this, where as I transfer the gun on the other hand, it touches the trigger, maybe accidentally. That could be a negligent discharge. So when I'm transferring, my finger is touching the slide. See the trigger finger position? I'm touching the slide, and I'm kind of using that to push the gun across to the other finger. So if you want to work on your transfer, here's a good way to work on it. Work with the finger on the trigger for a second, as if you're firing, then put the finger on the slide, right? Slide, slide. So I'm switching my feet, slide, slide. And every time I'm doing this so I have to force myself and learn to go touch a slide, transfer, touch a slide, transfer, touch a slide, transfer. This is a great transfer. I mean, you can sit here and work on your transfer. Okay, drive it up here, drive it up the back strap. So every time I'm doing this, I'm driving the hand up the back strap, drive it up, back strap. Okay.
Mike, we got some questions, buddy.
Let's do it. Let's answer some questions.
All right. Ricky Roberts says, same index with the web of your hand, Mike?
So, Ricky, if I understand your question, I think I understand your question. You're talking about the index point when I'm transferring to my support hand. If you're asking that, yes. So, in reference to Ricky's question, Ricky asked, just add more if that's not the answer, the question you asked. Index point 1 in the web of the hand will dictate where the handgun is pointed. So when I feel the contact with my strong hand, for example, in the holster, I know that my hand is on the handgun properly. So when I transfer to my support hand, same thing. Right here, I'm going to drive the hand up, and I'm going to kind of feel where the web of the hand is in relation to the beaver tail or tang of the firearm, and I'll adjust it as necessary before I wipe that other hand off the gun. So yes, the same index point for my support hand after I've done my draw and transfer is the key to the motion itself. So great question.
Billy wants to know, if you had to shoot right side barricade, with the left hand, would your right foot be forward?
Wow, that's a great question, Billy. First of all, I'm trying to think of why I would shoot that side, but I might. We may have to do that for whatever reason. So right side barricade with my left hand, would my right foot be forward? That's a great question. So here's the deal. If I based on where the target is, Billy, if I could get my left foot forward, if the barricade's here, I would be putting my left foot forward. But I would guess and suggest that if I had to shoot right side barricade with my left hand, I would probably have to lean around the barricade. And if I'm leaning around the barricade, I would switch that principle up and have the right foot forward. Because, of course, I'm leaning, trying to get the gun out there to the position where I could shoot it, which means I'm putting my body weight that way, and I would need that right foot forward. So it would depend on where the target was, Billy.
Mike, you might want to turn your Wi-Fi on your phone off if you haven't already. Tracy wants to know, Tracy wants to know, says, doesn't flagging the thumb put you at risk for slide bite?
Hold on, I'm shutting internet down on all systems.
Looks better.
So does flagging my thumb put me at risk for slide bite? No. Let me show you on a different gun. So let's look at the SIRT pistol that has a tanger. I'll show you the bread in a second. When I flag the thumb, okay, I'm not taking the thumb and unbuilding my grip. So notice there's contact between the thumb here and the grip. I'm not opening the contact up. The only way for me to get slide bite would be to go higher on the slide. So maybe this high. Now my thumb would be in the way where I might get slide bite. So I am still under the curvature of the tang on the firearm itself. I'll show you on the Beretta, right? So the thumb is still under there, and I'm flagging this up, this knuckle up, but I'm not flagging it so high I've unbuilt the grip. Does that visually look okay, Rich? Can you see that?
Yes, absolutely. It looks good.
So that's the position of the hand. Great question. Folks, sorry if I was lagging there for a second. Shut the internet off on my kids, although they shouldn't be up. So, okay.
Adam, so how much do your splits change one-handed from two-handed?
Oh, good question, Adam. It really depends on the target size and the target risk, but if a normal, there's no specific number that I can give you, but if a normal split was, let's say, a 20 on a standard target body size target, my splits would probably increase to 30 or so with my one-handed shooting. But it depends too. With my strong hand, I can still shoot a lot faster because it's my strong hand. pull the trigger with my strong hand all of the time. I'm probably slightly slower with my support hand. When I'm doing my strong and support hand, I try to bring my support hand up to my strong hand shooting. And by the way, this isn't relevant to the question, but I do strong and support hand practice every single session. I practice it every single session, just a little bit. So it's not something where when I go to a match or whatever else, I'm afraid of that strong hand stage. Okay.
Brian says, with single-handed stages, how do you do immediate actions?
Well, I would assume you're talking about clearing the malfunctions, Brian.
Yep.
You use the other hand. There's no match. There are no match rules that require you to only use one hand. They wouldn't do that in a match. You couldn't clear the malfunction one hand only. So you use the other hand. You have to. Matter of fact, I think you're required to. You can't do, well, technically, I think you could do one-handed stuff as long as it wasn't unsafe. Maybe IDPA can help me out, but we wouldn't do that. Just, you can use the other hand to clear malfunctions, do reloads, or whatever else. But when you're shooting, you have to be shooting with just that single hand.
Joey says, what kind of live fire drills should be done one-handed? Draw to first shot, one-handed bill drills, etc.
Yeah, good questions, Joey. So here, and this is for everybody watching right now, 143 people watching live stream. So when everybody looks for a drill to solve a problem, right? So think about what a drill does. A drill builds a skill. So if I'm working one-handed shooting, what am I actually trying to accomplish? If I'm just working on the actual aspect of shooting, I don't have to do any necessary drill with the draw or whatever else. I will literally, like when I'm working one-handed shooting, I'm just working on, I'll have a loaded firearm, and I'll initially just work on building the position, right, and firing a shot, right? So build the position, right, fire a shot, see what the gun does. Build the position, fire a shot, see what the gun does. So I'm doing those same series of drills that we've talked about in different videos, the one-hand extend, prep, and press. Then I may increase that number. I posted a drill recently on Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, give me a follow. It was a 1, 2, 3 drill. So basically you have 3 magazines. And this could be done with one hand or two hands, but basically with one hand, I would work one shot at a time, and I'm firing my shot, right? Every single time, I'm firing the gun, and I'm testing it. So when I fire the shot, I'm seeing what the gun does to me in recoil, and I'm adjusting my body, and I'm adjusting my grip. I'm trying to manage that recoil and try to master the management of the recoil. Then on the second magazine, maybe I fire 2 shots. So I extend the handgun, fire 2 shots, right? So I'm extending the handgun, firing 2 shots. So I'm making sure when I'm firing 2 shots, as I'm pulling the trigger, that I'm not moving the 3 fingers. Then for my third magazine, I may be firing 3 shots. 1, 2, 3. So once again, I'm seeing, am I pulling the gun or moving the gun with the 3 fingers or not? So that's how I typically practice. Then you could, of course, add a manipulation. Well, does my draw and my transfer change what I'm doing in terms of the recoil control? Think about this. Shooting with 1 or 2 hands is this. It's right here. You finalize the grip, boom, and you fire the gun. That's practicing shooting. Maybe I practice it off balance. Maybe I practice it with one hand. Maybe I practice it with my support hand. Maybe I practice it while I'm moving, right? But the point is, the extension of the handgun, the firing the gun, is what we're really focusing on in our live fire sessions. If you had the draw and the transfer, you just added a manipulation to see if the manipulation affected the recoil control of the handgun. That was a long answer, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. And it looks like Chris has put up there, rules and equipment questions should please be directed to your area coordinator or international point of contact. Thank you, Chris. Jesse says, do you have any tips for new shooters learning to establish the first index point?
Good question, Jesse. So Jesse's talking about the first index point on the handgun. And here's the bottom line is, Jesse, when we're talking about that initial index point, if I take the handgun and I fire it, right, and I pay attention to the sights being pointed at the target, I can feel where the tang of the firearm should be in the web of my hand, right? I can feel that. So then I'm going to take the handgun, put it in my holster, and then I may simply work on drawing the handgun, or not even drawing, just establishing that initial grip, right? And I can feel that index point. And maybe every 5th rep, I'll take the handgun out, point the gun, and say, okay, was the sight pointed to the left? Or is the sight pointed to the right? Do I need to fix it, right? So I'm working on the grip and the holster, right? Okay. And then eventually I'll test it. Okay, where was the sight pointed? Was it pointed to the left or was it pointed to the right? And we pay attention to what we see on handguns all the time. We aim the handgun. Everybody aims typically, right? Pay attention to what you're feeling in your hands. That's a critical skill for you. Okay.
Mike, Justin wants to know, he says, do you find that you change the placement on the trigger from shooting with 2 hands to 1? I found that to be the case for it. Looks like he says that that's happened to him. Yep.
So I generally, Justin, great question. I find that I pull the trigger with the same finger. Of course, I can reach the trigger, with both hands. So if I go to my support hand, it's the same position. So here's a trigger tip for you folks, right? So in pulling the trigger, is it right or is it wrong to have, the more the pad or less the pad? So here's what I found is the more the finger is wrapped around the trigger, right, the more likely you are to move the gun with the trigger finger, right? You may literally hit the frame of the gun with your finger there, okay? So I'm cautious. So I want to be in a position, and I think my internet's lagging just a little bit, so forgive me, I'll say it again. I want to have my trigger finger in a position where I'm applying pressure directly to the front pad of the trigger. I don't want to put pressure on the side of the trigger because I don't want to push the gun in either direction because of that. So I want to have pressure directly on the front of the trigger. So for me, that means that I'm pulling the trigger right about the center of my fingerprint roll. So when I do that and switch to my other hand, Justin, I think, I don't have a different trigger finger position for me, at least.
Joy says acquiring the dot one-handed is my biggest problem.
Yeah. So, and I hear you. So how do you work that? Well, you figure out what the best structure is, and you take the gun. Let's find the dot backwards, Joy. So take the gun, aim it at the target, find the dot, right? Okay, and then pull it off the target. Wherever your natural arm position would come from, like in this case, it'd be toward my holster. Okay, and watch how the dot comes into position, right? Of course, I have iron sights in this case. And more importantly, don't worry about looking for the dot right away. Get the target in the window. So get the target in the window of the optic, right? And learn that position. One of the things that people often, especially with carry optics and all the optics these days, which is nothing new. We were shooting open guns with optics on them, 80s, whatever it was. First, I think Jerry Bernhardt was the first shooter to do that. Anyways, you have to have a memorized position. So it's literally go, okay, present, find the dot. Present, find the dot. I like to have the dot planed out. We talked about that in the carry optics discussion we had a few weeks ago. And then do it with your strong hand. Learn this position. Learn the position, right? Go to your support hand. Learn the position. Learn the position. It's a learned position. And the more times you do this, the faster you're going to find that dot. Okay? Don't let the gun do this, Joey. Don't let the gun do this. I want to have the gun planed out, right? The more it does this with an optic on it, the sooner you'll see the optic. Right? Don't do this. Or try not to. Okay?
Tina says, just joined. I will watch the replay. Looks like great tips to pass my FBI shooting qualification. Thanks, Mike.
Awesome. Good morning, Tina. How are you? Long time viewer.
Yeah, Joe Marsh says, go Team Blue.
There we go. Team Blue. I'm wearing red today, Joe. But I have some blue on my shirt.
You'll always be Team Blue, though, Mike.
I'm always Team Blue.
Elke, let me back up. Steven, I think we answered your question. Steven says, are you pulling the trigger with the first pad of your finger or the first knuckle?
Yeah, good question, Steve. Yeah. Let me give you a really good trigger finger. So if you look at my finger, it's right there on the first pad, right? So I'm pulling the trigger right there on the first pad. I don't go all the way up to the knuckle. Okay, it's right there on the first pad. Now, I'll give you another trigger pull-in secret. If you take your trigger finger, and make yourself a little fake trigger here, right? Like you're with your other finger. When I pull the trigger, if you notice what I'm doing there. This joint doesn't move, right? I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing this. I'm doing this. So I've relaxed that first joint. So I can pull the trigger really, really fast, okay, on almost all trigger lengths, and I pull it directly from the front of the trigger. Front face of the trigger, not the sides of the trigger, right? By the way, this is how you gas a cool-fire trainer up. And why didn't we hit 175, Rich? You all were sharing like crazy.
We got 169, buddy.
Tina's probably a member of like the well-armed women or to girls something. Sorry, Tina. What? You're a huge member of a huge group down there in South Carolina, right? Tell them all get on right now. We got to hit 175 live viewers, right? Oh, trigger. Although that's the cool-fire trainer, which allows me to work multiple shots. Those were headshots. Mr. Rich, any other questions?
No, but I just want to say, remember the Cool Fire Trainer, guys. It's your gun, your sights, your trigger, your grip panels, etc. You're just replacing the barrel and the recoil spring. Elkie does. He has a question. Says, would a little extra trigger finger help prevent pushing the shot towards the non-supported side?
Maybe. So here's the deal on that. When I used to shoot bullseye with a Beretta, I would wrap my finger around, right? And I would actually make some contact so I could really just kind of squeeze the gun and have almost no motion. But I don't like extra finger now because Elke, which is in Colorado right now, I think, see how my finger here is touching the frame? If I go too deep, I'm pushing the gun to the left because I'm making contact with the frame. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to aggressively pull my finger straight to the rear and not move it. Here's the secret for you all. The real truth is we spend, Rich, here's the deal. I'm gonna put a secret on Facebook. This is the biggest secret of the century, and I'm gonna put it on the Facebook right now. Are you ready? Here's the real truth. We focus, and we are, even in this live stream, I did it for many, many years, so much on trigger finger position, trigger direction, trigger finger, trigger finger, trigger finger. The reality is these three fingers are much more important than this one. Hear me, because these three fingers in the web of the hand, thumb, this is what's supporting the gun. This is what keeps the gun from moving. Okay? They move the gun or they keep the gun still when I'm pulling the trigger. Does that make sense? Not this. Everybody's so worried about trigger control, trigger finger position, trigger placement, blah, 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 blah. The reality is these three fingers, the supporting fingers, are what keep you from moving the gun, right? I don't know if laser will zap my camera. Okay? Versus. See the difference? That's the secret of the century. Just remember that. If you remember that, when I'm doing my one-handed training drills, I go grip with the three fingers and shoot. This is all I focus on. This is it. That's it.
165. I got a question from Cody. Mike, Cody says, does your grip pressure change at all when shooting one-handed?
Oh, good question. So I would like to say, was that Cody? Right?
Yes.
Cody, I would like to say my grip is always maximum grip at all times and there's no motion. Sometimes even I undergrip the handgun. So with my one-handed shooting structure, I very much focus on really gripping hard. Like gripping as hard as I can with these three fingers while I keep the thumb flagged. And then I maintain that exact pressure. If I do that, I can fire the gun with whatever trigger manipulation I want and I won't move the gun. If I don't do that, I'll move the gun. So yes, my grip pressure doesn't change, or I don't want it to change, but it's hard with two hands. And remember, I'm controlling a lot of the recoil with two hands by crushing the back of the gun. With one hand, I can't crush the back of the gun as much, so I'm really using these three fingers, flagging the thumb and pulling the thumb muscle into the back of the gun with these three fingers. So I just grip the gun really hard with one hand.
Thanks, Mike. Johnny says, does a flat face trigger help?
Good question. So this is a curved trigger, obviously. It has to be. It's a double action trigger, right? It's a longer trigger on the double action and then it's shorter on the single action, but it's still curved. And notice that I'm still focused on pulling the trigger straight to the rear. I'm not doing this, right? So this trigger is a flat trigger. I found that a flat trigger gives me a little more distance between the beaver tail or the tang of the firearm to the front of the face of the trigger. So that flat trigger keeps my trigger finger, notice how my trigger finger is out here now versus back here. The farther my trigger finger is out, the faster I tend to be able to pull it. So that's why I prefer the flat trigger instead of the curved trigger. But I can tell you, John, it doesn't make a bunch of a difference. It doesn't make a big difference, okay?
Johnny says he shared it to 8 groups, LOL. Awesome. Mahaya is on, and Mahaya says, but what if relaxing the first joint of the finger doesn't allow for a straight back pull, like I'm pushing a bit to the side? Should I change the trigger blade?
Maybe, yes. So I think you're talking about going to a shorter trigger, Mahaya, if that's your question. So yes, back in the day with the STIs and the SVIs, I think it was SV initially, they came out with a trigger system where you could change the face of the trigger. You could go with the long to medium to very, very short. So yes, you're going to want to have your trigger finger in a position where you can isolate and not move this joint much if it's possible. Understand that once again, it's not the single most important variable. The other three fingers, the supporting hands and fingers, are by far the most important variable. Because even my buddy Rob Latham, with our DVD series, he pulls the trigger in a little bit different trigger finger position than I do because he has super short fingers. So yeah, he has to. But yes, I would suggest that if you can have a shorter trigger face, that might allow you to pull the trigger more like me.
All right. Joe says, would there be any difference in anything if you were using a revolver?
Nope. Same thing. Okay. There's a revolver trigger on a semi-auto. It's the pretty much same thing. I'm just rolling the trigger. When I do that, notice I'm rolling through. I didn't do this, right? I didn't wrap around it. For me, I still am pulling the trigger directly on the front face. Let me run this out of gas. Oh, almost. There we go. There's my double action trigger pull. No difference.
Mike Adams says, how much time do you generally spend in dry fire daily and compared to one-handed? And how often do you break down each movement into micro drills?
Oh, boy, that's a big question, Adam.
It is.
How much time? So I handle the guns or probably dry fire almost every day. So I'm shooting probably 3 days a week live fire. I'm dry firing the days in between, and I'm dry firing also sometimes in the days where I'm shooting. Almost every one of those sessions, I'll probably do some one-handed shooting. Most of my practice sessions incorporate a little mini 8 or so stage series of drills or skill building drills where I'm working on a moving draw, shooting on the move, a one-handed position, an off-balance position, a multi-port position, and stuff like that. So I'm always working through that, and almost every practice session incorporates strong support hand. You may say, well, why is that, Mike? Well, because if I go to a major match and there are 2 or 3 stronger support hand positions or stages or standards, right? And a lot of people don't like to do strong support hand, but I do a bunch of strong support hand. So my possibility of increasing the distance between me and my competitors is bigger in something harder like that or something more difficult that a lot of people don't like than it is to go, okay, I'm going to work on faster splits and gain 100th. Oh, wow, I gained 100th. But if I can shoot much better with strong support hand and win a standards, I may gain 20 match points, for example.
All right. Tony says, when you first started training, did you use any training tools or just live gun or unloaded guns with your students back in the day?
Mainly, to be honest with you, I didn't have a cert. They didn't make a cert pistol. My Qs didn't make it. They didn't make the Cool Fire Trainer back then. I just dry fired a lot. I dry fired every day, like a lot. So all my manipulations, my pickups, my loads, my draws, my everything else. That's it. And then in live fire, I try to really focus on learning how to shoot better. A lot of folks go to live fire and they're working on manipulations where you can work your manipulations at home. Your draw, your pickup and load, your reload, draw and transfer, your reloads. Those could be mastered at home, right? And then you can work on shooting better in your practice sessions, which is a critical component. Okay.
Yep. As Billy says, as your training buddy says, aiming is useless.
That's right.
Johnny says,
you gotta understand that full statement though before you believe in everything there.
Yeah, exactly. Johnny says, if your face didn't zap the camera, I don't think a little laser is going to hurt it.
I'm glad I didn't zap it.
Yeah, no kidding. Alan says, like Johnny King in reference to the flat face trigger, just got a flat face trigger for the M&P 9, and it is different.
Well, I tell you, interesting that you mentioned the M&P 9. One trigger that I always had a problem with was the M&P trigger because it's so curved. It has such a curvature. I found because of the bottom edge of the curvature, I would actually pull the gun low when I was shooting fast. So I completely agree. They didn't make. I don't think Apex was making the trigger, or they weren't production legal back when I used to shoot the M&Ps. But I absolutely would put a flat face one of those new M&P triggers in if I shot that system in competition. I think that'd be a huge game changer and actually would make a difference in how the finger hits the trigger and potentially moves the gun.
Mike Joy says, when shooting a group of horizontal targets one-handed, most shots right to left with the right hand and opposite with the left. Do you agree with that?
So I think he's talking about what direction would I pick if I'm shooting with one hand.
I believe so.
So to be honest with you, Joey, there's not much of a difference when I measured it. If I had a preference, I would probably shoot this direction toward the center of my body. I think I can move the gun a little faster there, right? But it honestly, it doesn't make much of a difference. I measured both ways. I just haven't found much of a difference. With my left hand, I would probably still shoot toward the center of my body. I find that feels and tends to be a little faster, but it's almost immeasurable, not much.
Johnny says, does double action firearms make a huge difference in training for strong hand manipulation?
So Johnny, does it make a big difference? I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but if you're asking if, I'm not sure what that question is exactly, Johnny. So maybe give me more details there. But if you're asking if manipulating the gun and learning to manipulate a double action trigger makes you a better one-handed shooter or gives you the ability to manipulate the gun, to manipulate the trigger without moving the fingers, yeah, it might. I spent a lot of time with this Beretta. I used to take a revolver. I have a Ruger. What is it? A Ruger, just a single security 6, whatever, double action Ruger revolver. Doesn't matter what model it is. In my range bag, and I would end with some double action shooting in most sessions just to be good with a revolver and have that skill as well. But to have the ability to pull the trigger, right, 5 or 6 times without moving these 3 fingers, right? So yeah, maybe if that was your question, double action might be a training advantage or a training tool, right?
All right. Rob says, if you had only 100 to 150 rounds for a week of live fire training, would you break it down into 2 to 3 sessions or just one longer session?
Okay, so only have per week for practice. That's a great question. So here's the answer to your question, Rob. That's not a lot of ammo, right? But it may be what you have. It's not wrong, right? I would supplement my training with a ton of dry fire. I would absolutely invest in a cool fire trainer because that will allow me to get almost where I would be in terms of live fire. And then personally, if you had the time, I would probably break that down maybe into 3 75 rounds. I don't know what the total there would be. That's about it. 75 round sessions or whatever you could do. And I would pay attention to every single shot I fired on the 75 rounds. You know, I would just work on the aspect of shooting better, which is what most people miss. So I'd probably break it down into 2 or 3 sessions if I had a choice versus one big session. And I had a private student just a week ago. He was like, well, should I, I used to go to the range once a week because I could only get to the range once a week and I would shoot 800 rounds there. Now I'm doing practice sessions of, 250 rounds for 3 sessions. That's much better than once a week, if that makes sense. Okay.
Tony says, I'm new to 1911s. When you do your dry fire drills, do you use snap caps or what?
Nope, never. I dry fire my 1911s literally millions of times, maybe. You're not going to damage a good 1911. You're not going to damage with dry fire. And if you were worried about it, you could have a dry fire firing pin and change out for your live fire firing pin or your match firing pin if you're worried about it. But no, I'm not worried at all about any damage whatsoever when I dry fire my 1911s. Literally dry fire them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times.
William says, any tips on minimizing lens flare when shooting toward the sun with a red dot?
Yeah, so make sure your lens screen is as clean as possible because any particulate, any dust, or whatever else that gets on that lens screen is going to flare out when the sun comes into it. But it's really difficult. I mean, different optics are different. Some flare more, some flare less. But there's not a lot of tips there. Just keep the lens as clean as possible. Make sure there's no condensation. Make sure there's no dust in the lens. That's the best option there. If you don't have if you have a fully enclosed emitter, that makes a difference. But if you don't on your optic, then that won't make any difference. So
John says, what do you think about the new Sig P365 Xl Comp that has the comp built into the slide and a shorter barrel, not a ported barrel?
So I haven't seen it yet, John. I don't own it. I haven't seen it, so I can't comment too much on it. But I could tell you, um, back in the day, a big police department I used to work with had full-time compensated Glocks, and they're fine. They're fine for the recoil movement reduction, meaning the gun shoots flatter. We all agree on that. The problem is when you start to compress and shoot from a close quarter position, and that comp is spraying gas and pieces of jacket or lead or whatever else out of the ports, or you go to a really close quarter position and that comp is spraying that gas right into your face. That was a big problem. So they actually went away from those compensated guns due to that position or those techniques. So.
Elke says, key point, you actually measured shooting both ways toward the center or not and found no material difference. Shooting toward the center one-handed is conventional wisdom to follow the recoil path, but may not be completely supported by evidence.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I didn't find there was much of a difference. Just like when I took my optics on my carbines and put one way out farther and one really close to my eye, and I thought there was going to be a big difference. There wasn't. There wasn't much of a difference.
Got it.
All right, Mr. Rich Brown, what else do we have? Any other questions? Man,
Yeah.
a lot of questions. Okay.
Uh-huh. Let's see. With so many, this is from John, with so many new shooters going to the 1911 Wilson STI, can you tell them why shoot with the thumb on top of the safety?
Great question, John. Man, so here's the deal. It's like a leverage point for me. Number one. So when I'm shooting with my thumb on the top of it, it's more leverage that I'm pushing down on. So if the gun is trying to recoil up, my thumb on top of the safety is helping prevent that. Not just my fingers and my thumb here, but this thumb is actually leveraging down on the safety. The second thing is if I'm shooting with my thumb below the safety, right, in a two-handed grip, that automatically pushes my left hand really low. I don't want the left hand down here. I want both hands nice and high on the grip. So by having the thumb somewhere else on a 1911, you're automatically lowering your grip down, which is no good, okay? Last but not least is I've seen some shooters that shoot under the safety, and in recoil, they push the safety on accidentally. Gun recoils or returns, they accidentally put the safety on. That's a no-go too, or a bad position to be in. So thumb on top of the safety with a 1911, pretty much the best position you can find.
Mike, that's all the questions.
All right, hey folks, real quick, because I said I would talk about it, I wanted to show you very quickly the flashlight stuff that I might use for an IDPA stage. So I have two flashlights here. One I have a little secret modification I wanted to show you. Okay, this is basically a rubber grommet and piece of rubber with some tape on it, and then a full length one. So here's how we've talked about the one-handed shooting position, right? In terms of getting the arm behind the gun, the body weight behind the arm, right? So if I have a stage in IDPA, I look at the targets and I look at the manipulations I'm going to have to do. If the shots are easy shots that I can manage with one hand, I will use my eye index technique, right? Which means I'm taking the flashlight and I have it right up near my eye. Boom, 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 right? I call this the eye index technique. It's the same technique I teach for defensive circumstances, right? And for me, I can have the flashlight in my hand, I can draw, and then boom, 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 shoot targets, whatever I got to do, much faster than I can trying to build a two-handed grip. But I also practice and do a two-handed grip. So if I were using a two-handed technique, because I need the other hand because the shots are really tough, I'm going to use my little modified flashlight, right? So I'm going to take the sucker. I'm going to put it between the first and second knuckles. I don't have a good battery in this, by the way. The batteries wore out. And I'm going to start with my finger on the button, right? So if the flashlight's in my hand, the second the buzzer goes off, I activate the flashlight, right? And then I can actually use a two-handed grip. Now, my secret grip technique here is I'm gripping the gun with both hands, okay? I'm making sure that the flashlight doesn't make contact with the mag release, and I'm taking this thumb and I'm pushing down. So by pushing down on the thumb, that activates the light, and the light actually shines exactly where I'm looking, right? So that's my two-handed position if I need more structure and support, and I can reach down, grab magazines, right? Work the slide, whatever I got to do with the thumb and the index finger, okay? So my preference for speed is just the one-handed eye index technique in the IDPA, by the way. Same defensive. That's our defensive technique as well. I can strike, I can shoot, I can defend, I can cover my head up. So that's my flashlight technique in IDPA. And I know we're at 8:26. I know a bunch of you shared. I really, really appreciate that. We have any other comments or questions? Mr. Rich Brown?
No, Joy says, thanks, Mike and Rich. Tina says, I wish Mike would add 17 South Rod and Gun in Savannah to his schedule when he's in Georgia.
Man, well, so reach out to me, Tina. We'll maybe schedule something down there sometime in the future. I'm going to be in South Carolina, Frank Scalisi's place or his club. Where's that, Rich? We went to last year. You were at the class with me last year.
I was. I don't remember. It's a beautiful place.
Belton. Someone put it in the comment. I think it's Belton, South Carolina. That's class still has slots open. So if you have a chance, come up and shoot. So
that's it, Mike.
All right, man. I do see one more question. Flashlight your head, make it a target. Yes, Tracy. Anytime you have a flashlight right in your hand and you illuminate it, you're a target. So whether you hold it with two hands, you're a target. Whether you hold it with one, you're a target. You're always a target. So there's no avoiding not being a target in terms of a flashlight. People try to spread that stuff on the internet. The only technique I've seen where you can avoid being a target is the old FBI technique, where they used to try to do this, which is very difficult. When you try to do this live fire, you'll realize right away what a failure it is. So yes, the flashlight does make me a target, just like the gun shooting at someone makes me a target. Not a problem for me. And that's all I have, man. Looks like we have a bunch of folks that shared and put stars and stuff. Hey, thank you. We didn't hit 175. Maybe we'll give a holster away. Maybe we'll do it next week. Maybe we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
anyway,
169.
Dang. So
169.
why didn't we hit 175? I can't believe that, man. That has to be something with Facebook. Anyways, folks, that's all I have. If you're just jumping on, or if you jumped on toward the tail end, you may have missed some really good conversation about structure, building that one-handed position. You know, we talk about structure first, where I taught you to get the arm behind the gun and the body weight behind the arm. Then I gave you some key secrets that are the single most important thing you can learn to do, which is to stabilize the gun, and that the supporting three fingers on the handgun are what truly dictate what the gun is doing as you're trying to fire it. So if you have a problem moving the gun, it's those three fingers, whether you're using your two-handed grip or your one-handed grip. So pay attention to that. I also talked about the importance of flagging the thumb, and I gave you a bunch of answers to a bunch of questions and some other tricks and techniques on trigger finger position. And of course, we ended talking a little bit about some low light stuff. So thank you for joining. I will announce, I don't think we'll be doing a live stream next week because I'm going to be doing some traveling. But after that, the week after, we will. Maybe time to switch the cycle up and do some PCC or carping if people have some interest. So if you do, type it in the comments, maybe what you would like to do or what you would like to focus on, and we'll do that. So that's all I have, folks. Don't forget, you got to get out and work on this stuff. So get out and dry fire at home, do all the draws and transfers and position and structure, then go live fire and work the skill. You have to put the time in. Whether it's 50 rounds or 500 rounds, it doesn't matter. You've got to do some practice, right? So get rid of that expensive cable subscription and buy some more ammo, right? Yeah. It's cheap. It's getting cheaper. It's coming down. Buy it now. Trust me, before things go crazy. Hey, folks, I see everybody saying thank you and have a great day. You all have a great day. IDPA, thank you for joining us this morning and share and have us on the page. You IDPA shooters, thank you. Rich, that's all I have, man. Till then, train hard.